Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters and friends. Welcome, our non-Muslim guests. Welcome to our non-Muslim guests who are joining us or will be joining us. We are live from the office today, mashallah. So we're not doing this from a distance.
No,
We are literally in the same place. Hope everyone is well, inshallah. Wa alaikum salam to you, our favorite edits, mashallah. I'm just going to put the light up. So, Farouk, bro,
yes,
while I
brother.
sort out do these little tunings,
Yep.
let's get
Fine
started.
tune.
Fine tunings.
MashaAllah.
Let's get
Assalamu alaikum
started.
wa rahmatullah, brothers and sisters. Alhamdulillah, thanks for inviting me down today. We are together in a wonderful place of knowledge. If you wanted to read a book, you have many choices, mashallah.
Mashallah.
But no, alhamdulillah, I'm glad we're finally doing it together in live, in person, and there's a few things we're going to go through today. But of course, we always start in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whom without nothing is possible. So we say, Allahumma salli ala wa sayyidina Mawlana Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam kathira. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum to you all. This is, I don't know when we last did a live, actually, and what we covered.
A couple of months ago.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
Yes.
But quite a lot's happened.
Yes.
I think maybe one of the first things we need to talk about, and just a reminder, today's talk, we're looking at, one, we're going to go through Diana Pasulka's appearance on the Jari podcast and what that means. Number two, we're also going to look at Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp's latest release. And to be fair, brother, I feel like that they've got a good track record, especially for those who are interested in following the topic and getting real news and real information. George Knapp, Jeremy Corbell, a thumbs up to them. I think they do great sort of journalistic work. I know a lot of people hate them and they've got a target painted on their back, but quite often over time they get proven to be correct, and also big Lazar supporters. So
Yes.
We're going to talk a bit about that video. We're also going to go into the congressional skiff that was happened only a few weeks ago, just at the end of December, and what that means as well, going further on into 2024 about the UFO topic. So
yeah, inshallah, bro. So yeah, let's get into it, man.
Yeah.
So Rogan's new podcast.
Yeah.
I've
got a confession, bro. Off the bat, yeah, I listened to about 45 minutes of it, and then I locked it off, bro.
I dipped in and out, and I watched loads of cutaways that people posted online. But it seemed like there wasn't much new. So just to introduce it, Rogan did a podcast with Dr. D.W. Pasulka, who is a religious studies professor, and she has been sort of a key player in the last couple of years in regards to this phenomenon. And she's bringing in the sort of religious studies angle into the discussion itself, which is interesting because that was missing, I guess. You had the scientists, you had the physicists, and that was pretty much it. And then you had the government guys and the whistleblowers and the journalists. But she brings in the sort of religious studies perspective. However, I have my own personal take on her approach and whether it's, she's doing what you can say is a good job. I don't know. We can discuss that.
Yeah.
But what did you make of the podcast, bro? Because this is a religious studies person speaking about the quote unquote UFO phenomenon now.
So I find it kind of strange that someone who has spent so many years studying religion, and the tangent she chooses to go on, and the theory and position she takes, is one of a philosophical perspective based on Plato's allegory of the cave. And this is what's shocking to me. There's a rich amount of literature out there for Christianity, you name it, any mythological story based that the religion is based off of, you have there to, if you like, go and research, study, look into, and then to form an opinion based on all of them. But she singled out one man and one example, and then she's kind of like creating her own little conspiracy theory around the idea that Plato somehow knew about this other world, the world of the jinn and devils, as we call it. Yeah, but Plato knew and was able to tap into, and that's what he was teaching his students to do. But on the surface level, what he was teaching, a lot of people misunderstand this. This is what she's presenting, but actually secretly, like the hidden layer of his teachings is that, how to tap into the ether, if you like, as she described it. So I think with the knowledge she has and the position she holds in various, across her career, you can see she's moved into various positions in the academic world for religiosity, if you like, for the study of religion. But she's chose to single out one very, very minute and almost, what's the right word? Like very, I don't like to use the word, but nuanced take, and then brought that as like the main source of her understanding of this topic. I don't know. I find it bizarre.
Yeah.
And I think it's very niche, almost deliberate to try and, like, I'm a religious studies professor, but look at this thing over here. Don't forget all the other religious stuff. Look at this.
Yes.
It's almost like a, what's the right word? Bait and switch.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm right. Look, I don't know Diana, and I would like to talk to her one day and just sort of pick her brain. I'm not saying she doesn't know what she's talking about. She certainly spent time with people on the inside. That's another thing I learned from her, Joe Rogan. She said that early on, she met with people from the inside,
yes,
who had differing opinions on it, and she didn't like the way they were talking about, the non-involved. That essentially we don't deserve to know. I mean, I can't remember exact words she was using. So respect to that for her to get into those positions so early on in her study.
I think she's been let in as well, but
yeah,
I have a feeling, and this is just my take on it. It seems like she's been, in some ways propped up, right? And like, I've got nothing against her. She's,
no,
she's a professor, but her approach to me is quite unusual. Considering that she is a religious studies professor, I would have expected her to be a bit more academic.
Yeah.
When approaching the subject.
Yeah.
Right. She has done work on certain aspects of Christianity and religious experiences. But the way, even the past two books she's written, the first one, Cosmic America, was quite a good book. The second one, for me personally, I didn't enjoy it as much as the first one.
No way.
And again, when I read it, and I was thinking, okay, there's so much that she has as far as information, at least from a Christian perspective, that she could be doing correlations with and comparing the phenomenon with the, but it's mainly, it's almost like her reporting on the experiences of certain individuals, and that's fine. That's something she wanted to do, but I hope she produces something else in the future, which is more quote unquote academic. And meaning, what I mean by that is that it's more of a study of the phenomenon in comparison to what's been going on throughout history.
Yes, yeah.
Second thing is, she's a religious studies professor, and she hasn't. I think she mentions in Encounter, she does mention jinn in passing. In the introduction of the book. But it'll be nice to see her really sort of do that comparative analysis between different religions and the phenomenon, and see what she has to say. But we haven't seen that. I haven't seen that. It's been quite what's the word I'm looking for?
Disappointing.
Yeah, quite disappointing. Yeah. It's been quite disappointing for me personally. But again, is that deliberate? Or is it?
Is that the Rosicrucian behind us? Poking her to go one way, because she did talk about Jacques Vallée's links to. I don't know how you want to describe the Rosicrucians, but one could argue that this is a secret society.
Yeah, we're gonna get to questions, brothers and sisters, inshallah. We're just gonna sort of ramble on a bit, discuss these things, and then we'll get to the questions. So have your questions ready.
Just to quell your your passionate question a little bit, to get a little taste. Yes, we know about Project Bluebeam, so no problem. We will discuss that. This is something that comes up often. When you scratch,
I don't. To be fair, I don't know anything about it.
Oh, you don't know? Okay,
but I've heard it be mentioned a lot online, social media.
Okay, we're getting to that at the time, inshallah. But yeah, to let you know, we do know about it. That is like a, like I said, like not even the tip of the iceberg. It's just like a scraping of ice on the tip of the iceberg.
Interesting. So we'll get to that question.
Yeah, it's not even, because people, when they hear about Bluebeam, they think, oh, this answers what this UFO thing is.
You must go into now.
Okay, we'll briefly talk about it. So Bluebeam was basically a project that America was involved in. What their plan was, and this was revealed by a whistleblower, I believe, if I'm correct, back in the 90s. And the project was that they were going to beam up into the sky images relating to people's religious, alliances. So, for example, they were going to beam the image of a god in the sky. That would create turmoil and have speech come out of its mouth, so that it would say something, command them to do things, to get people to follow, the commands of this air deity. Yeah. The trouble is, the people who came up with that idea have no understanding of Tawheed. So therefore, this type of trick would never work on a Muslim. The most it would do is make them think that the shayateen are trying to trick them. Yeah, for a true Muslim. For an ignorant person, maybe, but the vast majority of people who are, let's say, the ones to worry about for the, the Americans, they're not worried about the ignorant fools who are, not fools, but the ignorant Muslim who's out in the middle of nowhere just doing their thing and, sowing the land, tilling the land and feeding the animals and just living a sort of nomadic lifestyle. The ones they have a problem with, the ones with knowledge, the ones who affect change in the society, the ones who are orators, let's say, of the Ummah, who are out there pushing people towards Allah, pushing people to practice Islam. Those people can't be fooled by such a project as Bluebeam. So to know about Bluebeam and the documents supporting Bluebeam that have been released in the Freedom of Information Act, they're there. You can go read them, but it doesn't answer so many things. The idea that they're beaming something in the sky, like a UFO, for example, and then leaving it as a mystery. The trouble is, when you look at on whole the phenomenon, what it does, the possession aspect, the abduction aspect, the whispering aspect, if you like, the encouragement to things in people's minds, the visions it gives people, the contact events itself. When you add them all together, Bluebeam doesn't have an answer for all of them. It just has an answer for a few lights in the sky. So there's a whole section of the Bluebeam theory that is lacking. So therefore, it doesn't really produce a solid response to the UFO phenomena or the phenomena at large. Especially when it comes to the actual biological aspect, where creatures are seen running around, affecting change, people being abducted from their homes by these creatures. But yet these things can be answered within Islamic framework, especially within the jinn. And this is well known to people who've studied the jinn and know about them, that abduction events and things like that are part and parcel of the jinn phenomenon in totality. So inshallah, hopefully that answers your question. I don't think we need to go into it further than that. But yeah, Bluebeam is one that comes up often because people think, oh, that's just Bluebeam. Well, yeah, it accounts for a few lights in the sky, but not everything else involved in it. Certainly doesn't account for the huge major cover-up. It doesn't account for the turning off of the nuclear warheads, and in the Russian aspect, you're turning them on, making them live. So and it also doesn't take into consideration other things that have been seen over Iraq and so on and so forth. That have been whistleblown by the military themselves, American military. So yeah, I don't, it is one tiny little thing, but it doesn't provide any answers.
Okay.
Sorry, bro.
No, it's good, bro. We answered that, inshallah. So I guess if you guys want to send in your questions and we'll pick them up as we go along. Let's go back to what you were talking about, the Rosicrucianists.
Yeah.
And Valet.
Now, I'm not going to say I'm an expert on this, the Rosicrucians, because it's just one name amongst many names of what seems to be a very wide-stretching cult. People who were part of, say, the original cult, let's say, for argument's sake, broke off and made their own branches. Like you could say the Masonic lodges around the world. The Masons is the main thing, and then each one broke off and branched off and had their own things, and some of them brought their own knowledge. You could argue that the occult practices and the magicians and warlocks and witches and that, they're part and parcel of this wider sort of secret society of I don't know, like occult people. But look, I can't comment specifically on Rosicrucianism because I haven't done any major research. I've read in passing, but it's something that I really need to get into, especially now that we know Valet, one of the main dudes, is really one of them, and he's part and parcel of it. One question that comes up, because I know already that some of the whistleblowers, not whistleblowers, you could say Lou Elizondo, you could say that some of the people who are part of To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science, like that rock star Tom DeLonge, people like that, they are known to be Masons. And I'm pretty sure that the Masons or the Rosicrucians, or one begets from the other. So, they're kind of like part of the same sort of groups of people. They may have different beliefs, they may have different, it's like I said, I'm not an expert in them, but the secrecy aspect and the keeping knowledge to certain individuals and amongst certain people, very interesting. The fact that Jacques Vallée has held positions in research areas of the government in America, He was part and parcel of the original internet.
Yes.
Yeah, he's helped develop these things. He's told of stories where they took a computer chip to his priest, right? And he showed the computer chip to the priest, and the priest said, "This from the devil, son. Get rid of it. It's devilish." And we even have similar things from our own ulama, from our own scholars. I can't mind, and it's off the top of my head, but I think it was the original Shinqiti from back in the 1920s.
Yeah.
When they told him about phones, he said, "This is from the devil." And people that were refuting him, they're saying that Sheikh is, he's not using his mind. This is just technology. The voice on the other end is a human being. He's like, "No, this is from the devil." Funny that a priest and an imam and a sheikh and an alim both came to similar conclusions, that technology like that is almost devilish in nature. And sorry, just one last thing. Yes. A lot of these people involved in technologies were involved in occult groups. I think it was John, I think they call him Ogi Laird. He was the one who invented the TV. And it's so bizarre, but he said that the spirits told him what to do. Take that as you will, brothers and sisters.
Yeah, even with modern day rocketry, NASA, even Pusulka goes into the sort of ritualistic aspect of the behind NASA's launches, and how they have things written in Latin, glorifying certain gods and deities and stuff like this, which is very interesting. Going back to Valley and Pusulka, one of the things she does highlight in a book, and she mentions on Rogan's podcast, is when she went to Valley's library, that she saw, he took her to the section on angels and fallen angels. And it seems like Valley's, if you connect the dots, true or real perspective on the phenomenon is related to or linked to these beings that are spoken of in world religions, i.e. the angels and the fallen angels, as they call them. Which is very interesting again. I think it's a good point to maybe discuss briefly the sort of comparative between the Christian view on fallen angels and the jinn in Islam, and what we can sort of say about these two in comparison to each other. And are we talking about the same thing?
Yeah, I would say but that's in hindsight of Islam. For a Christian, they do believe that angels can become corrupt and evil and do wrong. This is something which we don't believe they can. We do believe that angels have their own mind and they can, think, but they only know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught them, and they don't go beyond that. So they never go beyond Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's, not necessarily the limitation he's given them, because everybody has a limitation that Allah's given them, and Allah's the only one who has no limit, right? But the Malaika, they don't go beyond the bounds set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But for the Christian, they can. And they can disobey Allah. And they can even fight against Allah as if they have like some sort of parity with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they have a strange understanding of the angels, but this is based on their own texts. And this type of understanding does benefit those who wrote those books many years ago, because when they were, if we go corrupt, if we can go corrupt, like, why are you having to go at us when the angels are corrupt too? So it's kind of like plants the seed of, like, who can blame us for doing wrong and being evil when your angels are wrong and do evil? So the idea of the fallen angel, it's kind of like, if you like, the perfect worshipper of Allah becoming corrupt and falling down. And that's why they have this view that Iblis was an angel. We have a very specific narrative about Iblis, who's a different creation entirely to the angel. And when he takes her to that library and she says, he showed me the books on the angels, he said something along the lines of, if there's angels, then there must be demons. So there's good and bad in this phenomenon. And we would say, yeah, we could agree with that to a certain extent, because us as Muslims, we know, like, often, I don't like bringing this hadith up, and me and you both have agreed, like, it can easily be misunderstood, this hadith. But there's a hadith, it's authentic, it's narrated by, I believe, Abu Hurairah. May Allah forgive me, I might be wrong there. But one of the companions of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was out praying at night. He was reading from Surah Al-Kahf, and his horse became disturbed, and the animals made noises, and a light descended from the sky and hovered above him. And when it was brought to the attention of the Messenger of Allah, he said that those were the angels listening to your recitation, and if you had carried on, they would have remained until the morning. This off the top of my head. Now, often Muslims, when we discuss this, some of them bring that up and say, these things are angels as well. The problem is, the only reason we know that they were angels is because of wahi, because the Prophet ﷺ told us, right?
Yes.
Otherwise, you would never know that was what was above him. You couldn't know, except from revelation. The second aspect to that is that in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will call the Malaika on the Day of Judgment in front of everybody. And he will say, because people will claim, we used to follow the angels. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring the angels forward and he'll question him. Was it you that they used to worship? Say, no, Allah. Indeed, it wasn't us. It was the jinn that they used to worship. Verily, most of them were believers in them. So the jinn also present themselves in forms that would be construed as angelic.
Yeah.
Based on Hollywood, what an angel is in Hollywood. Yeah, number one. Number two, based on this corrupt idea that angels can become sinful. Yeah, but want to repent and go back to. There's many movies like that where there's a famous movie called Dogma. Don't know if you remember that.
I've seen that.
It's a very corrupt movie with a corrupt understanding about Isa alayhi salam, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I mean, they picked, these, they depict Allah as a human, Isa as, they depict the angels as like, who had become corrupt and wanted to go back to heaven and arguing and fighting with Allah. Like, it's ridiculous. But the point is that, they present themselves in a way that people might think that they're angelic. So that's why we don't say that that's an angel and that's a jinn.
Yeah.
The best and most safe option to do is say that they're all jinn.
Yeah.
And you're not going to be thrown in hell because you, interpreted an event as a jinn that was outside the normal phenomena of the human being. So, for example, a very fast-moving vehicle in the sky that teleports from one spot to another, like has been described, in the case of Commander Fravor, where the vehicle was in one spot and in another spot in an instant. If it was an angel or a jinn, we don't know, but more than likely it's an angel, because most events, as the Malaika admit, that most of the people believed in them. They were fooled by the jinn. So most people will fall into thinking it's an angel when really it's a jinn. So yeah,
and it's to interpret the difference is very difficult.
Yeah,
even as a Muslim, right? So because experiences with something beyond this world, whether it's angels or the jinn, to distinguish between the two is very difficult, because the experience people have in most cases is an incomplete experience, if I can say that. Meaning, the being, whatever you're seeing isn't coming to you and telling you I am X or Y. And even if it did, knowing the nature of the shayateen and the jinn, that they are deceptive, you still wouldn't be in any better place to interpret it. Right? So there's a lot of confusion there. And that's even from a Muslim perspective, right? So from a non-Muslim perspective, well, it's even more difficult, right?
Yeah.
So, and I guess what we're saying is to be on the safe side, plus considering the deceptive nature of the phenomenon, as non-Muslims themselves have admitted and written about, that and Vallée himself writes about this, the deceptive nature of this phenomenon. It's probably safe to conclude that we're dealing with not angelic beings, but something more sinister. There's a few questions, bro. I don't know if you want to go over.
Go through. I wanted to mention as well quickly, because we have in our tradition, and we also have many narrations of karamat and incidents that happened in the time during the Prophet ﷺ's life, after the Prophet ﷺ's life, amongst the companions of the Messenger of Allah, all the way through till now, into modern day examples, in Afghanistan, against the Soviets and so on and so forth. There are definitely room to interpret if certain events as angelic events that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent, by the way. The angels only act upon the orders of Allah. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends his angels to aid the believers, this can happen, absolutely. And we would interpret events according to what the scholars laid out as a framework for that interpretation. So when you are trying to interpret an event, when it comes based down to active defense, so say if you're defending a land or an area and something strange happens, your enemy, his head falls off just randomly, it's something very bizarre, And this is, this has been the case and mentioned in stories of the past. It wouldn't be a stretch to interpret that as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala supporting the believers. Yeah. So I'm not saying there's no way that we can interpret anything as angelic. I'm just saying there is a framework that Islam has for these things. And, it's not common knowledge, by the way. Not everyone's going to know this, but it's important to mention that because what we would consider as angelic, though, our enemies might consider it as demonic.
Yes, so it's down to interpretation.
Yeah.
And the thing with religious experiences or supernatural experiences or phenomenal experiences is that because they are so unique and strange, by their very nature, it adds to the problem of interpretation. And again, it'll be based on which side you're looking at it from, what perspective you're looking at.
Fighting for Jesus, right? And then matey boy, that was a demon that got him. Some bizarre incident, and then the Muslim he'd interpret it as this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
But I think, like you were saying, I guess to summarize the point is that knowing what we know about the jinn, knowing about their deceptive nature, knowing how they have misled human beings throughout history, and that on the day of judgment they will be called out for this. Chances are what we're seeing in the form of the phenomenon is demonic.
Because the malaika, if you go through all you have on Islam, you'll find that the malaika never guide mankind except by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's command, and that mankind is only guided through a prophet. So a prophet comes. There's a system. This is the framework of Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends a prophet, and that prophet will liaise with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. An example of Musa, slightly different, alayhi salam, but through an angel. That's how the angels function in that framework of guiding mankind. There are the malaika that are unseen around us that protect us according to the commands of Allah. So if there's something going to hit you, or you're going to be in a car accident, or fall off a horse or whatever, the malaika, if they're commanded to, they'll stop those things from happening. Right? This is the case. We believe this as Muslims, but they will not come to a group or an individual or a scientist,
bring you revelations.
And say, guys, you've been selected. And
these are revelations. That's how you define a revelation, right? So now, if they're getting we know the angels won't do that because we know the final messenger has come. And the final revelation has come. And that's it. So if there's any new revelations, and these are revelations, if a being is coming to a person and telling them something about the future, or giving them instructions, this is how you define a revelation. Then we know it's not from the angels, right? Interesting question. You want to tackle this, bro? It says,
go on, you read it out, bro.
For aliens to exist, space must exist. And since Earth is flat and space is fake, aliens can't exist. Some assumptions there, brother.
Yeah, let them have them. If that's what you think, bro, no worries, man. Listen, for us, it's not a big deal for me for you to say that. Cool. If you don't think that space exists and therefore aliens don't exist, that's fine. Number one, we haven't said they're aliens. So, you can come and talk about aliens, it's fine, but we don't believe that they're aliens. Not in the sense of the word, at least. Can they present themselves as an alien? Absolutely. The shayateen, they have very sophisticated plans to misguide and corrupt mankind, So could it be that they've approached these people as, we are from another planet? Why is it an American accent? I don't know.
It's you, bro.
Yeah, it's me. But that can, according to our scripture, can the jinn travel to space? Absolutely. It's confirmed, not only in the Quran, but in the Ahadith as well. So this is like a well-known topic. Anyone who gets any book on the jinn, you're going to find that, they go to different aspects of the heavens and the earth. The heavens, plural, and earths, plural. So also, there's no restriction of mankind in the Quran. Allah doesn't restrict mankind just to this earthly realm, this planet, and this dimension of this earth. Allah doesn't restrict us to that. One could argue that the probing into the microbial world is an example of that, of us looking into and interfering with other realms. But look, that's just an opinion. It doesn't make it part of Islam. But I'm just saying that if you consider and ponder on this, so the idea, what the brother said, or I don't know if it's a brother,
the flat earth,
the flat earth and fake aliens can't exist. Yeah, it's cool, man. No worries.
But I think before we move on to the next comment, mashallah, jazakallah khair for sharing these stories and comments, guys, and sending in your questions. May Allah bless you. There's an announcement I want to make. I think is a good time now. We'll do it again at the end. And before that, I think to summarize that first part of this discussion that we've had. No, looks good, mashallah.
It shines up. Yeah, I polished it. Oh, well, yeah, I did.
Polished it.
Nah, I did get a haircut, man. The geezer
Mashallah.
maxed it up.
That looks nice.
I said to him, I want a short back and sides, and matey boy left everything on top. So I look like the Fonz.
No, it's all good, bro. It's all good, man. It's nice, mashallah.
So I said cut it short, and then he ruined it.
Alhamdulillah. One area I want to go into after this announcement, bro, is the shift in discourse we're seeing over the past month or 2 months, where they're going from ET, this has been happening for a while, to non-human intelligence, interdimensional, religious discourse has been brought into the discussion now. Pasulka, whatever her take is, people like her are being propped up in some ways and their perspectives. I think it's a very interesting shift that's taking place, which we'll discuss in a second. But let's go to that announcement, bro. And, tell people what is Irep.
So, alhamdulillah, praise be to Allah. And in the name of Allah, we, over the years, have had an idea to start an organization. We've mentioned it before, but we've got the website running now. It's not functioning yet, but it's running. So the landing page is there. It's coming soon. We are working on it in the background, adding little bits to it here and there. But the idea of IREP is Islamic research into exotic phenomena. Now, for the Muslims and for the non-Muslims who are listening, what we want to do is oftentimes people who so there's different aspects to it. We are going to have a media wing, so we are going to produce documentaries, short ones, long ones. We are going to still produce live events like this where we sort of react to the news that's coming out. We are going to discuss different aspects of our research and present that there on the website, and interact on social media. But IREP essentially is Islamic research into exotic phenomena. We're going to research all different aspects of incidents that happen with people, individuals, in the public eye as well. So massive events, much like the one that happened in Miami a little while ago. Hopefully in the future we'll have reps in certain areas who'll be able to go down and investigate and do a real robust interviews and look into these incidents to provide a solution Islamically. We also want to hear of personal experiences and problems people are having. Sometimes the jinn, from our theology, the jinn do affect people. They come into their homes. They are a nuisance. They move things around. They hide things. They cause general mischief and trouble. And a lot of these YouTube channels and investigators, so to speak, they go there to get that video to make views.
We were talking about this the other day, isn't it?
And so they get views out of the trauma and difficulty of that person that they're going to visit, and then they make their little documentary on it, and then they leave them. But what we want to do is slightly different. We want to, because we're a research initiative, we want to try and help, and we want to document that help for research purposes. So we will come for free of charge, inshallah, to people who are suffering. It's going to start in the UK, but eventually, inshallah, we'll go worldwide with it. But we want to come and help people who are suffering. If you're suffering from abduction phenomena or possession phenomena, or if you've got poltergeist phenomena in your home, or your children exhibit strange behaviors and things like this is all, and there's a huge spectrum, right, of different phenomena. But we want to investigate and help people who are suffering with it. So IREP's not only going to have like a media and a research wing, but also, if you like, a help aspect to it. We want to help people. We want to get rid of the problems in people's lives, and we want to share what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed to us that helps these incidents. There are certain surat of the Quran, there are ayat of the Quran, there are verses, there are chapters in the Quran that have been sent down by God himself to help us against these creatures, because they are real. Not a lot of people, it's not just an inspiration, it's way beyond that. They can affect your lives greatly, and some people more so than others. So we want to make something that will be a place where people can get help for these things. So that's what IREP is in a nutshell. But there are a few other bits that will tag on and grow with it.
But I think the core concept is important. I've shared the link with you guys. So for the website, which is not up yet, but it's coming soon, inshallah. Irep.world. And the idea, like Farouk said, that it's twofold. One, we're moving into a time or an era where the supernatural is making a comeback in a big way amongst the irreligious and godless. And what this is going to do is, number one, this is going to lead to questions amongst the materialists and secularists that Islam has answers to. So there's a powerful dawah element to this as well. Secondly, what's also going to happen is that people that have been having experiences, Muslim and non-Muslim, throughout the ages, throughout the past couple of decades, throughout this sort of godless age as well, but who have been too shy to come out with this stuff, they're going to start coming out with this stuff.
Yeah.
Because there's no more, they're seeing, oh, look, our secular leaders are talking about this stuff and are happily discussing this as real. So we're going to see more reporting on this stuff. And these people need help. And like you said, many people aren't being helped. So if whatever we or the people that we may work with who may specialize in exorcisms or stuff like this, that we can provide this help to those people through those services.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also going to act like as education for Muslims as well, because there is an outdated, and I'm going to say this, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I may come across a bit harsh with this, but there is an outdated perception of the jinn amongst the Muslim communities. Mm-hmm. And it's not because Islam hasn't said anything about it. It's because Muslims have forgotten what Islam has said about the jinn and these beings.
Yeah,
the jinn are very relevant to our existence in this world. Allah addresses them when Allah tells us, one of the central ayats that scholars mention in regards to, the ayat that everything revolves around in Islam. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. Allah created us and the jinn kind for no other reason except to worship Him. The jinn are mentioned. Allah outlines for us that the jinn have a significant impact on us and our test in this world. The waswas of shayateen, right? His objective to mislead human beings, etc., etc. So is to and Allah tells us a lot about them, mm-hmm. what they are, what they're able to do, how they manifest, etc., how they impact people's lives. So there's a lot there within our tradition that the Muslims have become unaware of over the past couple of centuries. So it's to do that research into this aspect of it and share these things so people are aware of, because it's sad. If you look at the academic literature, bro, one of my professors at university told me this. He said, Muslims don't even believe in jinn anymore. They see them as a psychological or this symbolic type of entity that's mentioned. They're not real in the Muslim mind for most people across the world. And this is shocking. They are a reality. Yes, they are a part of the hidden and unseen. And yes, they function best when they're not known, especially the shayateen. The less you know about them, the better it is for them. But we need to learn about these things. There were volumes written, bro. I'll find it now, bro, while you talk to them, inshallah.
Yeah, sure.
There is a book here, and I'm sure everyone's going to recognize it. Yeah, this is just.
Which one is
this?
It?
Is one. This is.
Oh, that's a beast of a book, man.
This is just a popular. Most people know of this book.
Yeah.
The Devil's Deception.
Yeah, yeah.
Deceptions by Ibn al-Jawzi.
Yeah, Ibn al-Jawzi. Right.
This is just one of many books that have been written on this topic.
Dude, that's very comprehensive.
Yeah, it is absolutely.
Yeah,
bro. It's massive.
But even then, it's from just a doctrinal perspective. It doesn't even. There's so much that's not in there as well, but it is comprehensive.
Here's what's phenomenal, bro. Yeah, when you just go through the contents of this book, brothers and sisters. Yeah,
inshallah,
the Sheikh outlines the Shaitan's deception in every aspect of life. How he affects the philosophers, how he affects the scholars, how he affects the Muslims, how he affects, the non-Muslims. It is extensive. And what does this teach us, bro? One of the things this teaches us that our scholars of the past took this topic very seriously.
Yeah.
And they studied it thoroughly. And this is just one of many books. Most other books are not well known, and some haven't even been translated into English.
We have quite a few actually that I would love to have translated.
Yeah, so that inshallah will also be hopefully a part of the process.
Definitely,
we get specialists to do those translations. Inshallah, that idea is
as we get. Yeah, that's brilliant. As we get, you know how many anecdotal stories there are from the Arabian world. There was one story I heard from a sheikh of a young girl who was abducted. This was quite recent. This was the last few years. And the father said, I know who took her, it's this jinn. Yeah. And the people were like, what were you talking about? And he said, I know where you're going to find it, it's in Riyadh. Because he said, he heard a voice saying, I'm going to take her to Riyadh. There was nobody there, but he heard the voice say, and subhanAllah, they found her in an alleyway in Riyadh.
Allah.
She was like, early teens. One of the jinn became infatuated with her, tried to abduct her, and they found her in Riyadh, bizarre. So cool. But this was quite a recent story.
So just before we move on, bro. So anyone that's listening right now that may have certain specialities or certain skills that you may feel can benefit this endeavor that we're sort of embarking on, definitely message us as well. I think there's a form you put on the site, right?
I did.
So I guess they could use that form for just contacting us generally. So definitely use that form on that site, irep.world. I've shared it. I'll share it again in a second.
And that's for both Muslims and non-Muslims. Yes. Anyone can contact us on there. And this is a new, so you have to be a little bit patient with us as we are. It's kind of in the launch phase, so to speak. But yeah, if we're able to get to you soon, we will. If not, it might be a little while before we do. But inshallah ta'ala, you know, you'll be our first case file. Case 001.
Set up a WhatsApp group potentially.
Yeah, we will. Yeah.
But keep an eye on the space, inshallah. There's stuff coming. Let's go back to the questions, bro.
Yes, we will.
Without spending too much.
Go on, as you like. We've got.
This is an interesting story. A brother shared. Alien phenomenon is definitely jinn. 1997. Visit to our village in Kashmir. I've heard so many stories from Kashmir, bro.
Yeah. My father. Well, I don't want to say, but yeah, but I've heard stories as well.
Yeah, it's fun. Older bro was walking on his own in the forest area. Saw weird colors in the sky. Forest. He literally lost all track of time.
Missing time, bro.
Interesting.
Well, in my opinion, the missing time aspect is more a forgetfulness, because we know from Quran that the shayateen can make you forget. So you forget the time and how long has passed and what happened in between. So they make you forget things rather than, like, you know, your time disappeared.
Story continues.
Oh, go on. Sorry.
He then found himself running back to where he came from, but didn't know what happened in between and how much time was lost in between. There was a lot of jinn activity back in the village. So there you go. I mean, these are you know, eyewitness accounts, bro. You know, that a brother is telling us, you know. So
I would love to do like a whole just anecdotal book on all of these things.
Yeah, and bro, it's sad, you know, there's so many stories like this. But again, just like with the non-Muslim secular community where people don't want to report this stuff because they look stupid, even amongst the Muslim world, there are so many such stories which go against the grain somewhat, meaning they're not like classic abduction case, classic possession cases. But because there's something like this, people don't report them or talk about them or mention them. And therefore the whole thing is not studied or addressed. And I'm sure we're going to see a lot more stuff like this. Bro.
No, thank you, brother.
Okay, let's see. Sorry, so let's carry on, bro. We were at Valet.
Yes.
Is there anything else we want to? So yeah, the direction I wanted to take this in now was that over the past couple of weeks or month or so, few months, we've seen a shift from this sort of extraterrestrial hypotheses being pushed and propped up to this type of non-human intelligence, extra-dimensional, interdimensional type of approach. And we're seeing a lot more discussion on religion as well. Pusunka's been doing it. Nick Pope was recently interviewed on a news thing, and they talked about demons and how this has been interpreted. We know Christians have been interpreting it as demons for the past, since the 50s at least.
There's the Collins elite, the famed Collins elite, who are apparently the key holders to all of this, and they don't want it to come out because they said it's demonic in nature. This actually ties in with some of the comments we've got here, but you know, people often will, you know, concentrate on one aspect to present an idea of what's going on. That, oh, this is just a bunch of mentally ill people running around. This is a cover-up that has a historical narrative that goes back even to the 1920s, and even beyond that. The more you do research into that academic field and the cover-ups that have been involved in specifically physics and aspects of physics that have been hidden from us, and you see how deep and far it goes, you realize it's not just a modern claim of a few people inside the government saying that, you know, there's a non-human intelligence. This goes really, really, really far back. And it's kind of like a can of worms. Once you open it, they're just pouring out. The more you go into it, the more evidence there is to suggest that this is a far stretching conspiracy. One could even argue that claiming it's aliens is part of that conspiracy, because this is Hollywood who's put that idea out that the lights in the sky are you know, an alien from another life form from another planet with you know, advanced technology. When even Pasulka in her research, she said that she found it goes really far back to people having lights come into their houses, into their rooms when they're praying. To back in the day, they were praying and a light would come through, and they would interpret it as a religious event, as an angelic event, or as a devilish event, depending on what was going on. So, like, this is not a new phenomena. It's just interpreted in a new way and presented in media in a new way, in a mocking fashion, to say that it's aliens. But the Collins elite, they seem to think that it's and if they are a real group, by the way, because one could argue that they're not even a real group. But the point is that the conspiracies there are a number of targets that have got lines painted on them. Jinn, devils being one of them, angels being one of them, aliens being one of them, and it's kind of like hide the ball under the cup, isn't it? Which cup are you going to pick? You lift the ball and you lift the cup up, and the ball ain't under there. Oh, that was a trick. And this is the nature of the nature of the shayateen. So this is why even that aspect of it kind of like leans towards us. There's a couple of things here, bruv.
Yeah, I want to quickly address this question.
Yeah, sure.
So some atheists still deny the metaphysical events by saying that we are living in a simulation. Now, firstly, to highlight, because there is again, there's this popular movement of idealism and different forms of it, which it's to do with consciousness. They say consciousness is the base of everything, not materialism. So it turns the tables on materialism. But at the same time, some of them link this to the simulation theory, that we're in a simulation in a nutshell. But the first thing to note is that all of these ideas about the reality of existence are metaphysical claims in and of themselves, right? So they can say whatever they want. They can call it a simulation, right? And whatever they mean by that. But the point is, within the simulation, what people are realizing now is that there is something else going on, which is beyond that sort of traditional materialist way of looking at reality. So they still have to account for that, regardless, whatever they say the origins of existence or reality is. So hopefully that addresses that question. You wanted to ask anything else, bro? Any others?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think, I don't know if it's on there.
Okay, so this looks interesting.
What's that say?
We know that the jinn are from the unseen, but does that mean we cannot see the actions of them? Like one time I saw a dice flying from one point to another. Trust me, after that, my sleep was over.
I don't blame you, mate. My sleep would have been over too, bro. Seeing a flying dice. So to contextualize that claim, you said that we know the jinn are from the unseen. This is true. They're from al-ghaib. This means we cannot see. This means we cannot see the actions of them. Oh, does this mean? Excuse me. Does this mean? Well, we know that from the authentic hadith. And by the way, we mentioned a hadith earlier about Surah Al-Kahf, and one of the brothers was complaining. He said we destroyed that hadith, and they mention another riwayah of it. There are about four, maybe 3 or 4 different riwayah of that hadith. One mentions Surah Al-Baqarah. One riwayah mentions Surah Al-Baqarah, one mentions Surah Al-Kahf, one mentions that the lights would have stayed there, another one mentions that you would have seen wonders. So there's different riwayat. So sometimes when we mention that hadith, have a bit of mercy on us. We only wanted to just take the benefit of the hadith rather than go into the different riwayat of it and explain all that. But as you mentioned, my brother, we know from the authentic hadith, and it's a famous hadith of Abu Hurairah, who was left in charge of the charity of the Ummah, that was to be given to the people who needed it. And the Prophet said and put him in charge. And just to cut a long story short, sorry if it's butchering the hadith, forgive me, but Abu Hurairah had a visitor in a human form, but it wasn't a human. It was Iblis. It was a jinn. It was a shaitan. And the Prophet ﷺ made him aware of that after 3 nights of having this visitation of a human-looking person. And Abu Hurairah thought it was a human, and he grabbed him and manhandled him. This is in the hadith. He manhandled Iblis, and Iblis begged him to let him go. But the point is that the effects of the jinn can be seen, absolutely, because it was Abu Hurairah who saw him stealing the food. But not only the effects, the actual jinn can come in physical forms. There's another famous hadith where there was a snake. It's 2 companions were sitting with one another, and there was a snake that was found, and he was going to kill it, one of the companions, and the other one said leave it, because the Prophet ﷺ said, and he narrated a story about a man who killed a snake, and then he died himself. They killed one another, and the Prophet ﷺ warned the companions after that to be careful killing snakes in the home, because it could be a jinn from amongst the Muslims. So if you kill it, it's like killing a Muslim. So you have to follow the sunnah. You have to be careful when killing snakes in the house. the problem is when people hear about the jinn, they often get reminded of a very strong opinion that people take, in that because they live in a place we don't see them, as mentioned in Quran.
Yeah.
Right? They see you, him and his qabila, Iblis and his tribe, see you from a place which you don't see them. So people automatically think that nothing can be seen about the jinn, but they can take forms in which we see them. And that these other hadith I just mentioned indicate and qualify the ayah, that you don't see their world. You don't see into their world. You can't see what they're doing. I mean, there could be some in this room now planning something. We would never see it because they're part of the unseen, but they can interact with and come into this world. So we do see those interactions. There is also from Abdullah bin Masud radiallahu anhu, who he claims, and it's authentic. You can go look at it. And those who are interested, the scholars have explained these ahadith as well. But just to summarize it, Abu Huraira said, I saw the jinn compact around the Prophet ﷺ like a great mass. So the companions are saying something, but that's because they came to the world to see the Prophet ﷺ from their world. How that works, all the inner outings of it, we don't know. Yeah. You know, that's not important. So I hope that answered it.
No, I answered, bro. This is a nice comment by Arbaj. Arbaj? Yeah, Arbaj.
Arbaj Alim.
When I was not a practicing Muslim, I used to buy every fake propaganda news of aliens and UFOs of the West. After practicing Islam, I don't really care about aliens, ghosts, etc. They all can only be jinn. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it goes back to the point, isn't it, bro? Once you understand the concept of the jinn in Islam, and that means what they are and what they're capable of doing.
Mm-hmm.
Then from there you can see, okay, within that framework, all of these things can be accounted for. All of the paranormal, all of these strange sightings people have, lights in the sky, cryptids, all of this stuff could be accounted by the jinn phenomenon.
Even ancient religions like Hinduism. Yeah. I mean, obviously we the Muslim, we'd never worship a fire being, or a 11-handed being, or whatever you want to call it. But there's people in the past who fell into the fitna of worshipping them. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, did I not tell you never to worship the shaitan? So there's people out there, even to this day, who fall into the worship of Iblis in the Rajim, of a shaitan in the Rajim, and they do it. So, it counts for so many things, the jinn, excuse me. It accounts for many mythologies as well that you find in people's, the fairies and, these things, dragons. The jinn account for so many of them. And praise be to Allah for such a robust theory of the jinn, and it's very clear and concisive, yet open to application in other areas like other mythologies and other even into science. And this is something we're researching at the moment. We're looking into how even Ibn Taymiyyah talks about the effects shayateen had on scientific endeavors back in his time. So that's another topic entirely, but yeah, it's interesting. The jinn very much active amongst human beings for a very long time, trying to misguide us.
Absolutely, bro. Should we take some more questions and then carry on?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so ancient apocalypse documentary by Graham Hancock shows a regular pattern and entities in different civilizations. Yeah, Hancock's an interesting one because no doubt he's done some phenomenal work as far as the history of human existence and civilizations is concerned, which is an alternative view on sort of that sort of standard orthodox history that we read. And he does talk about entities and beings that came and re-civilized the world and all of this stuff. And he also goes into, in his book Supernatural, he goes into sort of the use of substances and certain drugs to help connect with these entities. And his views on traditional religions is quite a negative one.
It is, yeah.
So is he talking about the jinn when he talks about these civilizing beings? Maybe, possibly. Allah knows best,
Also, ancient humans who seem to have more technology than other people. That was a pretty good Graham Hancock. He does do, him and Pasulka, actually, they pick these very obscure, like there's a few mentions of, a lightning bolt in the sky. And then he holds on to that like this is found in so many, mythologies, and like there's kind of something to that. And they pick the most obscure thing and they run with it like it's the foundational theory, often running from religion. The fact is, a lot of people don't want to accept that they're doing something wrong. So they'll find any interpretation that allows them to continue the life they're living, whilst also having fun reading about interesting stories, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
They don't like that Islam has a hook with it. That yes, we have the truth here, but now you recognize the truth in Islam, you have to conform. I mean, look at this guy here, epistemics, blah blah blah. Yeah,
Yeah,
truth light.
truth light.
So let's just talk about truth light briefly. You know, this is someone who hasn't done his research. If he had been following what's happening in the American Congress and the political moves that are being made surrounding the UFO phenomena at large, and the whistleblowers that have come out, the scientists who have also whistleblowed about, you know, different aspects of physics that haven't been revealed yet, he wouldn't be making these comments. The problem is people don't want to actually do real research or real science. Going back to what we was just saying about Graham Hancock, he was, you know, laughed at, ridiculed, and mocked for ideas about archaeology, and he was called a pseudoscientist. And we, you know, right now, what's going on just about news?
Yeah.
Wikipedia. Did you see what's been going on? So effectively, there's like a gang, if you want to call it that, like they're all in cahoots. They operate on what they regard as misinformation. They constantly editing Wikipedia files about people who are involved in this topic. They remove, like, for example, there's a number of doctors, people who have PhDs who worked on sensitive information for the American government. And what they do is they go into their Wikipedia and they edit it. They remove the doctor, they remove all the information about their credentials, and they basically just look like foolish, backward people, not accepting, you know, not revealing the true nature about, you know, their work and what they're doing. So this is run by skeptics, a great number of skeptics. We know some of the more famous ones online. I'm not even going to credit them with their names, but there's people in the UFO field, and for that matter, you know, a lot of scientific fields, who gatekeep. If somebody comes with a new theory or has a new understanding of something that goes against modern science, we've time and time again for the last 100+ years, 150, 200 years, you see that these new, even when washing hands during surgery, bro.
Yeah.
There was an Irish scientist who came up with the idea that when women are giving birth and you should wash your hands. He was called a kook. He was saying he's insane, you know, and they ridiculed him, and he became very depressed, and he died alone. And then years later, he gets a posthumous, what do you call it, Nobel laureate.
My God.
For saying you got to wash your hands when you do surgery. These people exist today, by the way. They control the narrative. They spin the narrative. They remove true information, present false information to make this look like a ridiculous topic. But in reality, politicians know, aerospace companies know. There is definitely clear evidence from the aerospace companies and from that industry at large, how they fund and lobby the American Congress and what they called representatives and so on and so forth. Those people, it's there. You can see all the paperwork there. You know, they're taking big chunks of money for their campaigns, and they're remaining quiet on this issue and even going openly against it. And then there's other Congress people who are pushing to get the truth out. They're saying there's something to this UFO phenomena. We want to get to the bottom of it. It's very old now. It's over 80 years you're holding documents back from us. Let's get to the bottom of it. So, unfortunately, Truth Light is unaware of it.
I would say Truth Light, please check out our other stuff on the channel if you haven't already on this topic, if you're interested. And we're not getting paid for doing these live streams. Yeah, it's not.
We're paying.
I hope we're not making the fun of anyone, because it's a very serious topic.
It is.
And we're just trying to educate and clarify what this thing really is for people. Inshallah. Mashallah, we've got a question here. What are your thoughts on dreams? How does it fit in with the phenomenon?
Do you want to answer that, or should I?
You go for it, bro.
So there are 3 types of dream in Islam. There's one from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is a dream that's based on your activities of the day. And then there's a dream from a shaitan, ya rajim. So there's 3 types of dream. Can the phenomena affect the dream? Yes. Yes, they can. Normally in a negative way. They make you feel scared or upset, or something horrific happens in the dream, causes you distress. That's the extent of it. If there's a dream that that strengthens your iman, or is awe-inspiring, or you wake up and you feel closer to Allah from it, and it's a good dream from Allah. And then sometimes you have like a ridiculous dream, where you're drinking tea and the tea runs out, and then you go to fill it up, and then you realize there's coffee in it or something, like that, like a dream that has like a sense to it, a rhyme or reason or meaning. Then often these dreams don't have any meaning to them. One, to understand sort of, there is a time frame the Prophet indicated that you're more likely to have a true dream, and it's after the time of Fajr. So once Fajr came in, not saying that like way after Fajr, that in the middle of the day, and then you're like, yeah, I missed Fajr and I had a great dream. I mean, like, the Prophet said that it indicates more truthfulness to that sort of type of dream. So if you have a dream after Fajr comes in, but before sunrise, for example, and you wake up and you just had a dream, you wake up at that point and you had an amazing dream, there's more likely to have some sort of element of good from it, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But Allah knows best.
Tariq, our brother Tariq, mashallah, we were with him last week. May Allah bless him.
Oh yes, salam alaikum, bro.
Mashallah.
We're popping around his on the way home to grab some of that grub.
May Allah bless him and his family. He fed us to the point where we couldn't move. I was flat on the ground, bro.
Dude, just flat on the ground.
I was out.
I was struggling away, but I managed to stay upright.
Mashallah, may Allah bless him, bro. I hope you're well, Tariq, bro. Walaikum salam.
He's a blessing, man. May Allah bless him and his missus and his children as well. Give them all for those.
So, assalamu alaikum, Hom Tanks.
Hom Tanks.
So nice. I thought Twitter was created.
Yeah, all right, Hom Tanks, mate. Hom Tanks.
Also,
he's the oldie Tom Hanks, man. Except without the accusations on him. I mean, alert tone. Thoughts on Shams Ma'arif. Do you really want my thoughts on that?
Go on. Well,
okay. So there is a lot of mystery surrounding that book. It was allegedly written by a Sufi back in the day. It's meant to be like the key to magic. People are very superstitious about it, like even saying its name. Some people are like, you shouldn't even talk about it, it's a cursed book. Whilst books can have cursed information and lead you to shirk and to do evil, that's 100% true. But it's no different to a modern book. Subhanallah, Allah is the greatest, Allah is perfect. These things do exist. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did test mankind thereby. There is information that is haram for human beings to learn and to implement. And Shams Ma'arif is just one representation of that. But yeah, I don't think it's any worse than any book written on that topic of magic and demonology, if you want to call it that, or black magic practicing. There's many books out there that talk about it. Shams Ma'arif is no different to them. Many of them people claim, they call it the Necronomicon, it has roots in Shams Ma'arif and things like this. But all those books come under the same heading of haram knowledge that shouldn't be practiced or learnt by anybody, So I wouldn't single that book out as the most worst one. Any single one that teaches you and leads you towards that sort of knowledge is haram and forbidden, and it causes mischief on the earth. So
absolutely. So Oktay says, but Islam can account for other life forms, material made from the earth, life forms which might be living in galaxies far away. Absolutely. And we've always said this, and I guess it's a good point or time to reiterate this, that Islam accounts for both possibilities, whether it's aliens from another planet or if it's something that we're already familiar with, such as the jinn, that are taking on specific forms and appearing in specific ways to today's godless world. So yeah, absolutely, there's no issue there. But what we're saying is, and that's why we're not doing what I call the jinn of the gaps approach. We're not forced to make sense of this phenomenon with the jinn, because Islam doesn't allow for life on other planets, or aliens as we call them. Both possibilities exist. The Quran has verses which could be understood and interpreted as Allah speaking about creatures and creation, that He's created physical, material beings like us, that He's created on other planets. It's a possibility. But when you look at the phenomenon, you study it, and you look at what Islam says about the jinn, you see this parallel, this clear similarity between the two, which leads us to conclude that this phenomenon that we're currently looking at is most likely the jinn. Not aliens from another planet. And by the way, if you go outside of Islam, you look at what the respectable academic non-Muslims are saying, they seem to be leaning towards the same thing. Not saying the jinn, but saying that they're not aliens or extraterrestrials, that they are something else. So yeah, Jazakallah for sharing, bro, and giving us the opportunity to clarify that specific point. Let's see, Richard Dawkins. Forget Dawkins, man. May Allah guide him. He's on his way out, and no one's interested in his type of atheism these days, anyway.
It's even right now, all the people who are quote unquote atheists are scrambling to explain this thing. Sam Harris, had a kitten online. He's panicking because it destroys their view of the world. So they have to account for this, and they're trying to use quantum physics to try and explain how there could be another life form that exists without us being able to see it. So they are scrambling right now.
So there's a question here by Al-Tone. In the report by Al-Tahawi in Mushkil al-Athar 495, 3 types of jinn are mentioned. The third type is, and a type that stops for the rest.
Stops for rest
and then resumes its journey. Could you elaborate on it?
Yeah, there's a couple of riwayah from this particular hadith that mentions the 3 types. The one that flies, the one that changes into different animals, so the dog and the snake. I'm just doing it off of memory. And then there's the one that comes and goes, or as it mentions here in the translation you've used, this is in a type that stops and then resumes on its journey. This is actually, for me, one of the more interesting aspects. A lot of people really like to talk about the flying part and the the shape-shifting part that hadith indicates, but this third part for me is really interesting because Jacques Vallée, he presented some evidence in one of his books. I can't remember which one. I think it's interdimensional or something like that. Excuse me. But in that book he presents evidence that he looked at sightings, right? And the UFO phenomena is one aspect of a wider phenomena, and it's one of the more rare aspects, as we've noted, because it's hardly ever that you see them. Possession and poltergeist and waswasa, all these are much more prevalent phenomena that people suffer with. How many people say they hear voices that don't belong to them and they get told they're crazy? Now there is room for it to be that they're crazy, but it's also could be brought on by a whispering thing. But anyway, so the aspect that comes and goes, Vallée, he shows that there has been like spikes, and it goes like this. It goes small, and then the following, like it's not really following a set pattern, but when the spikes happen, they get more and more views, and it's lasting a bit longer. So the graph's kind of like, and that's been since like the 1920s and through till now. And now the especially with the advent of phones, people are feeling more comfortable to talk about what they've managed to record. Because if you just go and tell someone, "Oh, I saw a UFO flying along," people just say, "Yeah, whatever." Yeah. So people have kept them secret. But what's happening now is we're seeing greater numbers, more people reporting them, and they seem to be coming and going, if you like, more often. And there'll be areas as well. There'll be like a hotspot in France, and there'll be a hotspot in Britain. Then the hotspot might be in America or in Southeast Asia or in the Middle East. But they have evidence for these hotspots, and they have evidence for these things coming and going, which is something you couldn't predict. Accurately, this statement of the Prophet, I said, to talk about shapeshifters, you could argue that there were this idea of shapeshifting existed before. You could argue that something flying around, lights were seen in the sky before, but this particular aspect of the hadith, nobody ever said that before, that they come and they go. And this is indicative of the truthfulness of the Prophet. So number one, that we're following someone who was revealed to by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not that this is the linchpin of that belief, but I'm just saying this is one aspect why we should believe him. And the second thing is that we actually have data that we can prove that this is the case, that they come and go in different areas and in different intensities. Yeah. And even historically, just last thing I want to mention on that, we have the mythologies of the religions around the world, how that sometimes people are talking about these things as if they live next door to them, and then there'll be a huge period where we don't see or hear anything about them. And that the question becomes, well, why is that? That's even reflective in our own history. You have in the time of Sheikh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah a lot of discussion regarding the jinn and their interference through the Sufis. And they're not, I'm not going to say every Sufi, but there were certain groups of Sufis who did utilize the jinn, and there's evidence for that. And then you go like a few hundred years later, and there's hardly anything written about them because they weren't as prevalent at that time. So even historically, the coming and going, the interfering of mankind is there. So on a wider scale, it's there, and also on a macro scale, if you like, or micro scale, they're also there. So you have the more localized coming and going, but then the wider yearly, sort of decadely or 100-yearly coming and going of them. And it seems, Allah knows best, that we are entering into a stage of the interference.
That's very interesting. John Keel, also in his book Trojan Horse, in the first chapter, he goes over, because of all the reports he studied, the patterns.
Yeah.
And it seems like they come and go. And there's certain days that they're more prevalent on compared to other days. So it's interesting research that he's done on this.
Was it him who said that he picked out, I'm not going to mention the months, but he picked out a certain number of months, and he said, if you go in those months...
he does that. He gives you the whole breakdown in the first chapter. It's very interesting, based on the reports that he has. Brother Carl's there, mashallah. He joins us on our Twitter spaces regularly. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Carl. I think our brother here likes the Jinn of the Gaps. Yeah, I stole that from the God of the Gaps thing. Because that's what some people claim and accuse us of, isn't it? Or they'll accuse the Christians of, but it doesn't apply to Islam because we have the framework to interpret it both ways. So there's no force to interpret
it. It's 1400 years old, this framework. Like, a lot of brothers will come in and be really negative towards what we're talking about because they haven't looked into it. When you go and look into it and you see what the scholars are written, you're like, oh, yeah, these guys are just reflecting what's already been said.
Yeah, absolutely. So Shehraz H says, mashallah, you brothers doing great work. I've been following your videos. Question, what's with the physical findings that certain countries have made of aliens? Question.
Does he mean the biologics?
I think that includes biologics. It may include craft.
Okay, actual aspects of the craft.
Whatever they've got as far as physical stuff.
Yeah, this is like kind of like the point where a lot of people kind of get confused, isn't it? They're like, oh, well, the jinn. I had a long discussion with a brother about this. He said that, oh, well, they don't build craft like that. That was his claim. I was like, well, how do you know? If they were in the time of Suleiman, being used by Suleiman for their skills as builders, they were way ahead of humankind at that time. And that was one of the blessings Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him. Not only that, in construction, like building, they're moving physical things for Suleiman. So they're in this world with him, moving physical things for him, creating out of material things for him. And then they're bringing the throne of Bilqis like in an instant. It's evident that they were advanced then. So you have to then give me evidence and prove to me that although Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does describe them as builders, that somehow they lost that capability and that we overtook them overnight. Over a few years, we overtook them and we became more advanced than them. So the question, the onus is on you to prove that that they can't build things technologically. Number two, we also have what we mentioned earlier about that alim. Yeah, the Sheikh, he said that he believes that these things are from the shayateen. In his fatwa, you can go see it. The third is in the 1960s, Umar al-Ashkar, or 1970s when he produced the book, in his book, The World of the Jinn and Devils. He alludes to, using a narration of found in the Friends of Allah, Friends of Shaitan, and also in the Jinn, the essays of the Jinn by Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah. And it's even in his Majmu' al-Fatawa, it's there as well. So, like in all of his books that people will know about that discuss these topics, in his Fatawa book as well, he narrates the story of the Sufi master who was given a device, a shiny piece of glass, smooth, over a liquid that allowed the Sufi master to talk to the jinn. He could see them, they could see him. And he would ask them questions, they would give him answers. And then the jinn would show him through this, his murids, what they're up to. So like maybe there's a shaitan flying along with an android, right? And he's like, showing the murid to the sheikh. So when the murid would come back, he would like describe, oh, I saw you stop, you scratched your leg, and then you picked your nose. And then, and the murid would be, he must be a friend of Allah to know what I was doing when he wasn't there.
Yeah.
As an example. So Shaykh al-Islam mentioned this story, and then Umar al-Ashkar, rahimahullah, who passed away in 2014, I think, may Allah have mercy on him. He did great amount of work on the Creed, the Islamic Creed series that he did. In his book on the world of the jinn and devils, he narrates this story, and then he applies to it. You know what he says? He says that, and he didn't know about the mobile phone when he wrote the book, but he said that the modern technology that he's seen utilizing wave functions, so like TV, and radio, he said it's not a stretch of the imagination along the lines, just to modernize the linguistics, yeah? It's not a stretch of the imagination to assume that these things existed in the time of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah and the jinn had their hands on them. So we're not presenting something that we invented. There's ulama who discussed this before. There is evidence for them having a technology from before. So number one, building things we don't have a problem with. Number two, biologics. How on earth did a Sahabi kill a jinn in the form of a snake if it wasn't in a biological form?
That's very interesting.
So that's one thing you have to answer to me before you denounce any existence of a biologic. Number two, how did Abu Huraira manhandle Iblis, or a shaitan, should we say? How did he manhandle shaitan if he wasn't physical? He wasn't a biological entity. How did the Prophet ﷺ strangle and then plan to tie up the jinn, the ifrit that attacked him during Salah, except that he didn't want to compete with the dua of Sulaiman alayhi salam? So, and his saliva went on his hand. In one of the riwayah, it mentions that saliva of the shaitan went on his hand. And one of the scholars used that as an evidence to say that they have saliva in their mouth. And there's one riwayah that said tongue. So the tongue and the saliva went on his hand. And one of the scholars used that as an example to say that shayateen have tongues. So with these things in mind, when you look at it on the whole, the idea of them being biological, the idea of them being technological is not a stretch. And it's not something that we did in isolation of the ulama. The ulama have already mentioned this. We're just presenting it to you in 2024. And the people have problems understanding that some kuffar or even Muslim nations may have recovered strange materials, whether that be metals or whether that be, technology, or whether they've found strange biological entities that don't fit in with the rest of the animal kingdom, if you like. We don't have a problem with this as Muslims. From a belief perspective, we don't have an issue with this. Those who are ignorant of the topic may. They might think that we're presenting something that brand new, and we're trying to innovate in the religion. But no, this is since the time of the Prophet ﷺ. It's just knowledge that we've forgotten, unfortunately.
Yeah, and also to keep in mind that the claims of tech and biologics is not proven. Right? These are just speculations or ideas that are circulating, and nothing has come out yet as far as proving that these are actually real biologics that have been. And there were some strange stories going about these biologics being unformed, where the esophagus is unformed, the liver and the kidneys are mixed. So it's very strange, some of these ideas are coming up, but there's no evidence for it. And even if it is, here's one way, as Farouk has presented, of it.
I should have clarified that, shouldn't I?
That's fine. It's fine. I think they get it, but I think this is one way of understanding the biologics of it. If there are biologics, there.
If they were to come out and say it definitively, even though we don't have to believe them, right? We don't have to believe they've got those things. But if they did have them, we would say this doesn't affect at all in any way, shape, or form our religion. It doesn't affect us in any way. If you have them, good for you.
Yeah.
We don't deny that you can't have them, because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for that chink in the armor, if you like. They're looking for that point where they can say definitively Islam is wrong because it claims this and we have this over here. But the reality is, if they were to present X, Y, Z, we have the frameworks for it in Islam. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, for such a perfect religion and a perfect explanation for this phenomenon. Alhamdulillah.
So Home Tanks says, is there a connection between UFO and the arrival of Dajjal? Allah knows best. But any speculation on that, bro? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we could easily speculate, and the Muslims, we love a little sprinkle in the old, salt-based speculation. It's pure speculation. Now, one can say without a shadow of a doubt that the Dajjal, al-Masih ad-Dajjal, he will utilize al-jinn, because we know that the jinn, from authentic hadith, that the jinn will take the form of a dead man's loved one. Dajjal will say to him, should I? And by the way, brothers and sisters, it's off the top of our head. We're not going to, go to pull the hadith up, but off the top of my head, Dajjal will say to a man, shall I bring you your parents to witness for the truthfulness of what I claim? And he says, yeah. If you can do that, if you bring my dead parents, I'm going to believe in you. So he does. He brings forward the man's parents, but it's not his parents. It's a jinn. It's a shaitan in the form of his parents, who assume the voice of his parents, who look like his parents, who talk like his parents, and they say, worship him for he is your Lord. And then the man, he'll fall into that fitna. So we know from that the shayateen are at least aiding and abetting the evil plan of a Dajjal. whether or not that this UFO topic
is leading to something,
we don't know. Allah knows best. If you were to think that, I wouldn't call you crazy, but we can't assert things for certainty. This is one thing I just want to clarify with you, brothers and sisters. We don't assert anything except for the Quran and Sunnah as a certainty, especially when it comes to interpreting events at the ends of times. Many people have gone astray because they try to wedge in an understanding of an ayah of Quran or an understanding of a hadith into modern times and give their own perspective to it of what it could possibly mean. And then they become attached to that understanding that they have. They become amazed by their own intelligence of coming up with that theory. And then they don't let it go. And that becomes their whole thing that they base their, their Islam on. Their amazing understanding of it. We see in especially some of the more popular shuyukh how they have these radicalized people around them who believe everything the sheikh interprets, even though he may contradict himself like over the last 15 years about 50 times. So we want to warn against our brothers from falling into
Absolutely. I think it's good to highlight that, we stand in the possibility of being incorrect in our interpretation of what's going on. So, even if it is ET, the key thing is Islam accounts for both explanations.
Yeah.
We may be wrong, but what we're doing is we're looking at the data, we're looking at what's coming out and looking at what we know about the jinn and making this comparison. And it seems like we say, if it swims like a duck, I always get this wrong, swims like a duck, it quacks like a duck, then it probably is a duck, right? That's what we're essentially saying. So it's good that you clarified that, bro. Carl, brother Carl says he's
good old Smithy, mashallah.
Is it possible,
welcome, Carl?
Is it possible that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't tell us explicitly about aliens on other worlds, as it has nothing to do with our test? We could have prophets from other worlds spreading the same message of Tawheed.
Yeah, it is possible. Now, I wouldn't say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't tell us about angels, because like you said, there are some indicators in the Quran. But to say explicitly, one could argue maybe some ayat are quite explicit, right? Because it says those that are worshipping Allah and the sun inclines to the left and to the right. So what I read somewhere that somebody interpreted that to be a binary star system. This is the thing, it does indicate that. Is that what it's talking about? Allah knows best. Now, to say that it's not part of our test, you could argue that as well. That's why, because there's so much emphasis put on the jinn in the Quran, and that all of these things match with the jinn, one could argue that it would be remiss for it to be other than the jinn. Like, there's a thing that's exactly like the jinn, but it ain't them, and it's gonna change the world forever. Bizarre, isn't it? Like the whole interpretation of physics and everything now has to change because of this thing that's not mentioned in the Quran, although it seems like it is. You just have to do a lot of mental gymnastics for it not to be there. So I'd say your interpretation is quite right in a sense. But may Allah bless you, bro.
Electron says, sorry for the fake name, allows me to ask these silly questions. No questions are silly.
Sure, mate. He's worried that some brothers are going to do a PDF refutation on him, isn't it? Tomorrow he's off the manhaj, bro. I'm only joking. Man, I bless
sorry,
you.
The camera's shaky when you stop bouncing the table.
It's me.
Sorry, bro. Sorry, guys.
I forgot my feet on it. That's what it was the whole time.
It's a very
the whole time. The whole time it's me and my stomach and my feet, bro.
Okay, hopefully that you're not going to get shaky camera now.
Sorry, Manib.
Could that saliva be plasma? Carl says.
Yeah, mate.
Don't get him started on plasma now.
That's what I'm right in there at the moment, bruv.
Okay, so let's preface this. These are some initial thoughts on what Farouk is about to share with you in regards to some of the research he's been doing.
Yeah.
It's not definitive, but it's interesting. It's very interesting. So do you want to share some stuff?
Yeah. So we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what he created the jinn from in two places in Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions Surah Hijr and Surah Ar-Rahman. There's a third ayah, but he doesn't actually state what he made them from. But there's two fires mentioned. There's the fire, the mixture of fire, or if you like, the smokeless fire, and then there is the scorching fire. So obviously, naturally, anyone who sees these ayat want to know what type of fire it is. You, mashallah, did some great work into the Arabic, and so we also now having to learn about plasma physics. And what's strange about learning about plasma physics is there's some works on this topic. And those who have written about it, we're talking about scientists, PhD holding specialists in their field. What's amazing about some of the findings they've found from a scientific perspective correlates with what we have about the jinn. So at this point, to say the saliva could be plasma, it could be, I don't know. Allah knows best on that one. If we was to ascertain that it was plasma, it wouldn't make a difference, I think, as to what the hadith is indicating. We don't want to become like those people warned about in Surah Al-Kahf, who spent time, discussing how many was there in the cave. Was it 7 and the dog was the 8th, or was it 6 and the dog was the 7th? And then there's another one where they discussed what color was the dog. Was it black? Was it white? Was it a mixture of black and white? This is all knowledge that doesn't provide any context to the story. It doesn't benefit us in any way, shape, or form. So knowing if the saliva was plasma or not, I don't think that would affect, the meaning of the hadith in any way, shape, or form. But the fact that Allah indicates towards plasma, I thought it'd be worthwhile investigating. So there are some claims that scientists have made, not just today. Plasma science is a very obscure science that oftentimes those people who are specialists in them work for the military and work for the government. And they often get signed into secrecy agreements that they can never spill their work out. So they struggle for many years after being relieved from their duties as military scientists. They struggle trying to get their research out because they're so well tied up into these secrecy agreements. And anyone who's been researching the UFO topics know that particular world has a completely different framework of law than the rest of the world, the rest of the modern world. People think that, you have to go to a court of law, and these people are exempt from that, bro. They have a completely different exemption because of the nature of the stuff they're working on. So with that in mind, there are some really good people who have, managed to go in there and pull out what they can. And they've found old documents that indicate where the research was going towards plasma and this understanding. Some of them are saying that not even like in a speculative way, but in an outright way, that there's plasma life forms that we can't see. This is what they're saying. This is completely independent of Quran and Sunnah.
Yeah, and that's interesting.
It's very interesting. I'm not confirming the science because we don't need science to confirm the existence of the jinn. Rather, the scientists need to conform with the understanding we have from Wahi, from revelation.
But what we're speculating is that
is what they've found.
Yeah. Is that the smokeless fire Allah is mentioning, or the scorching fire? Is that referring to plasma, or could that mean that these are plasma-based beings?
Yeah.
We can't speak in definitive terms because the Arabic itself doesn't reflect directly plasma. Yeah. But we did look into the lexical meanings of those. The one specific word, I think, the smokeless. If I can't remember.
You looked up Nar Samun, didn't you? Which is not the smokeless fire or fire smokeless.
And the lexical meanings were very interesting.
No, marriage in Minna. That's what you looked up, and I looked up Nar Samun.
Let me see if I can find it. But do you remember I can't remember talking about the meanings, man. I think there was a couple of different
yours was very rich in meaning. The one I found wasn't that rich in meaning. It was quite.
I think we don't need to get into the specifics.
No, we don't.
But it can one speculate that this smokeless fire is potentially plasma? Allah knows best. But it is interesting considering that scientists researching this are saying that there can be plasma-based life forms.
Yeah. Some have gone as far to say there is.
Yeah,
and they've brought their evidence.
Plasma holograms, this stuff, that exists.
Coherent plasma. They call it complex dusty plasmas. For anyone who wants to go look into that, it is a rabbit hole and a half. But it's not just a rabbit hole for the sake of going down something. This is a scientific rabbit hole, if you like, where scientists have for many years. It's kind of like when you find something that changes the fabric of understanding of things. Science often doesn't like that.
Yeah.
So it throws everything out the window. So therefore, they put it to the side. It's really interesting.
It is very interesting.
Complex dusty plasmas, if anyone wants to look into it.
Yes, and also stuff about plasma under certain conditions being taking on forms, which was very interesting as well.
Yeah, intelligent forms.
And they normally are speaking about unconscious plasma states.
Yeah.
Right? Now, if you now correlate that with a conscious type of plasma state or being, then that's very interesting. There's some correlation there.
Sahih.
And that may also explain from the perspective of the phenomenon with its interest in nuclear facilities and electricity and the way it behaves around these things, because plasma is affected by these things, or interacts with these things in some interesting ways. But again, these are all speculations.
Definitely
right?
speculation.
And Allah knows best at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So I think we could leave it at that, bro, before we get too creative.
Yeah. It's a funny one.
Should we take? We'll probably take one more. What's this? I haven't even read it. But when I was a kid, I used to watch Ancient Aliens on History TV 18 channel, 18 channel for hours, thinking all of these things were real aliens. They were making me a fool all along. See, one thing I'll say before I go to you, bro, with Ancient Aliens theorists, the approach they take is they impose their theories on aliens upon the ancient world and religions. So they go the other way around. They say, oh, it's aliens that brought these religions and created these religions and seeded us and all of this type of stuff, which seems to be the approach some of these new guys in the discussion or discourse about the phenomenon are taking as well, which is very dangerous, and it could lead people to a new religion. And one of their fundamental beliefs may be that these beings, this phenomenon, created us, and therefore is our Lord or our Creator. And I see that happening amongst some people already. Bledsoe, for example, and people that follow him take a similar route or approach to this. So you have to be very careful the angles this phenomenon or the narratives that are going to be spun in regards to this phenomenon. But yeah, I think the ancient aliens have it upside down, basically.
Yeah, I think so too. They've even tried to the thing that they did as well with Islam and the Quran and the Kaaba and things like this. They say that the black stone was a gift from the alien. It's all sorts of stuff they come out with. They're a confused bunch, but it's for entertainment purposes. So that's what they're doing it. But if you read their thing, they literally say it's for entertainment purposes. So they'll say whatever they want, mate. It's entertainment.
Okay, so I think we'll wrap up there, brothers and sisters. We have to go pray. Maybe you want to mention the Irep once again for anyone that's joining now, that's joined us late. Give us a quick summary of that. And
he's just complaining, bro. He said we should have invited him,
SubhanAllah.
Getting complaints, brothers and sisters. We're just trying to do the dawah, Allahu Akbar. No, you are right. Irep, brothers and sisters. IREP at .world. Irep.world. That's the website, inshallah. Jump on it. If any of you guys out there as well are good with building websites and things like that, and you wouldn't mind helping us, please get in contact with us.
We do need we do need help, inshallah.
Yeah.
Because like I said, it's non-profit. There is no funding behind this.
No.
No one's making a penny, pretty much. So
there's no money in it. It's for the sake of Allah and to worship Allah and to explain something that could help people who are suffering with these things.
So we need resources, and we need people with specific skill sets to help with this project. So if you go to the irep.world website and just fill in the form, and we'll get back to you, inshallah.
Inshallah. Also, you could go on our Twitter page.
Yeah, what is it? It's at exotic phenomena.
Yeah, at exotic
in plural,
phenomena.
So not phenomenon, phenomena.
Yeah, phenomena with an A. Exotic phenomena at exotic phenomena. Inshallah.
Give that a follow as well, guys. Inshallah.
Yeah.
And we'll do another live on this maybe soon. Anyone here that wants to hear more, before the next live that we do regular stuff on Twitter Spaces
all the time.
So definitely go there as well, inshallah, brothers. Pretty much like 4 or 5 times a week.
I'm almost every night.
Luke lives there. He's always there, mashallah.
But it's not just about, we talk about the lives of the prophets. We're talking about all sorts of different. I keep hitting that table, bro. That brother's going to go mad. He might throw up.
He's probably given up.
His eyes are like that, and he's he's vomited in the corner of his room. Inshallah, we don't just talk about jinn. We talk about the lives of the prophets. We talk about the Quran. You did a mashallah beautiful speech on the Quran the other day. So we do different things, brothers and sisters. We also think some Q&A regarding the things we could talk about. We did have one of the shuyukh come on and do a Q&A on Islam Q&A, so fiqh questions. So if you guys want to be part of that and come and join us over there, you can find us. I'm at Irrebulant. IRBULENT.
Make it simple, bro. So
Irrebulant. Yeah, I don't know why I came up with that silly name, but yeah, I like it though.
Mashallah.
Yeah.
All right, brothers and sisters.
Stretch my leg.
Jazakallah khair. May Allah bless you all. We'll catch up with you guys next time. Let us know your thoughts in the comment sections. Any questions that you have later. Farouk and me will keep an eye on the questions and answer them, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.